Nightmares series initially borrowed elements from games like Limbo and then incorporated adventure and discovery into its dark undertones and bleak setting. The series would give a voice to the most unsuspecting heroes as players guided them through moments of genuine tension that touched on our relentless desire to overcome obstacles, no matter how scary they may be. Now, I do believe that Little Nightmares 2 was what I consider the perfect send-off for the series, a way to twist the player's perception of the entire plot and make them question every action that came before. Now that the developer Tarsier has said goodbye to this nightmare, Supermassive Games is here to pick up the world building from where it was left. Looking at the game from a presentation standpoint alone, it seems like a natural evolution of this gritty world. Still, as Supermassive adds its own touches, I feel that the areas where it holds back ultimately limits the experience as a whole. Little Nightmares 3 begins with the introduction of two friends, Lo and Alone. The game opens with allowing you to choose between one of the two characters, with Lo wielding a bow and arrow and Alone using a wrench. These weapons come in handy throughout the adventure, but their inclusion at all is a significant shift for the series. While they may seem like combat tools, and in some instances you can use them against enemies, their main purpose is for puzzle solving. Strangely, there were moments where I completely forgot I even had a wrench, which does make me question their overall practicality. You see, something that's prominent should have played a more meaningful role in the entire game. Still, for the most part, you'll use the wrench to break down a couple walls, and the bow and arrow to hit an obvious target. The relationship between Lo and Alone is also meant to be deeper than it first appears, but there aren't enough moments that actually show it. I had hoped for quieter scenes, like, them sitting on a bench in silence, playing with a ball, looking at scattered papers on the floor, or even maybe coloring together, but instead most of their connection is shown through flashbacks. It's honestly a big missed opportunity, especially considering how significant the relationship was in Little Nightmares 2. Anyway, I digress. These two characters find themselves in a strange reality known as the Nowhere, which exists behind mirrors, I think. I'm not really sure. I'll admit that the rules of this world aren't fully explained. There's little contrast between Lo and Alone's real world and the nightmare of the Nowhere. So as the game went on, I just imagined it's something like James and the Giant Peach, and I just stopped caring about the plot holes because by the end, it's clear the team didn't land the conclusion as well as they could have. I'm not kidding. There's a point at the end where you finish a stage, walk through this random door at the end of the hall, then it fades to black. In my head, I thought, cool, next level. When the scene actually fades back in, I'm suddenly fighting the final boss? What happened? Who is this guy? What did I miss between those two fades? And why is this the ending? This comes about 6 to 8 hours after you're playing, and as the credits rolled, I went online thinking I had missed something. Then, I saw that 2 chapters were locked behind an expansion pass. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that those chapters could fix the story, but the abrupt ending left me wanting more actual game. And lo and behold, the more game costs a little extra. Whatever though. Now, I may sound like I'm being overly critical, but my frustration stems from how this world is being constructed. The earlier games ended naturally, leaving things open for a new team to define the next step. This was the perfect chance to introduce new storytelling methods, new gameplay systems, and more anticipation for the future. Instead, Little Nightmares 3 borrows what already worked and sometimes tosses in new ideas that end up overshadowed by the already brilliant world design of this series. The game is undeniably cinematic. There are times where you even forget that you're playing. Every area feels handcrafted, making you want to linger in each room just to see how far you can explore or what you can interact with. And unfortunately, much of the interaction has been stripped away from the game. There's even a room in the later areas where there's this teeter-totter that feels like it should be an optional bonding scene between the two characters, but it's completely static. Why create such a beautiful space if you can't play around in them? On the other hand, the horror elements shine through with the stealth and puzzle segments. Supermassive clearly knows how to build tension. Some sequences had me completely entranced, as if I was watching a perfectly choreographed nightmare, only to die and snap back to reality. The team really understands lighting and shadows, and it shows especially in the scenes where you get a flashlight. I have to give them credit for crafting environments that make you want to push forward even when you're a little terrified. The sound design matches the atmosphere perfectly, creating ASMR-level tension that seeps into every moment. Immersion feels effortless and is only breaking when you get stuck trying to figure out how to progress. Everything here just feels deliberate, maybe to a fault. The puzzles are so tightly designed that there's rarely room for experimentation. I often found myself wishing the game allowed me to think, what if I tried it that way? Instead, there usually only is one clear solution. Now, multiplayer could have been the key to loosening that rigidity by encouraging players to split up and experiment, but that almost never happens during the campaign. Speaking of multiplayer, I'd recommend playing solo first. The tone hits harder when you're alone, and the pacing feels a little more grounded. And mostly cause in online multiplayer, your co-op partner's energy can easily shift the moods, sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. Most of the time for the worse. The experience left me conflicted. Little Nightmares 3 succeeds at recreating what made the series compelling, its eerie design, haunting tone, and oppressive sense of curiosity, but struggles to define its own identity. Every element feels like it's on the verge of greatness, but stops just short of it. There's beauty in that restraint, but also frustration, especially when it feels like this world deserves to go further. Supermassive has proven they can handle the tone and presentation of the Little Nightmares world, but it feels like they're holding themselves back. Maybe waiting for the next entry to take that risk. Noisy Pixel is giving Little Nightmares 3 a 7.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.